Hear now the word of the Lord from the second chapter of Matthew's Gospel. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet, 'And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel.' Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, 'Go and search diligently for the child. And when you have found him, bring me word so that I may also go and pay him homage.' When the wise men had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy, and on entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road." This is the word of the Lord. Well, the beginning of a new calendar year is a time of unlimited potential. Fresh starts, new beginnings, promised changes in lifestyle, habit, or outlook. I'm speaking, of course, of New Year's resolutions. If you need help this year, one website offered the top 10 New Year's resolutions for 2020. You could all recite most of them along with me. There were very few surprises on the list. Quit smoking still makes the top 10. Get in better shape, eat healthier, save more, spend less, reduce stress at work or at home, get organized. But on the list I saw, at the very bottom, barely hanging on to its spot on the top 10, there was one resolution that stood out for me like a bright light shining in the darkness. It was different somehow, a beacon of hope. Be kinder. What set this simple goal apart is what it does not seek. It is not about self-improvement for its own sake. It is not about self-advancement, not about the best way for me to get ahead in the year ahead. This resolution, alone among those on the list, is not self-centered. Not about how an individual might get more out of life this year. Instead, its focus is on how we can contribute to the well-being of others. It's a reminder that we belong to a wider circle than the narrow universe of me, myself, and I. I read the resolution and I felt hope rising in my spirit. I found it hopeful in its orientation and laudable in its intention, and my thoughts ran wild. What if we were all just a little kinder in 2020? What if we took every human interaction as an opportunity to spread kindness? We could change the world this year, I thought. And then, as quickly as it had risen, my hope came crashing down upon me like the second morning of a 5 a.m. workout routine. Yes, I've tried that one too. I remembered how exceedingly rare it is for us to keep any of our New Year's resolutions. According to one estimate, just 8% of resolution makers are successful in achieving their goals. And what's even more humbling, at least to me, is this statistic that less than half of us make it past the first month with our resolutions still intact. It's not really all that surprising, though. After all, most of us are very good at setting unrealistic goals for ourselves. And this time of year makes that all too easy. We can be swept up in the optimism of a new page and therefore overreach in our expectations. And so resolution experts, which begs the question, how does one become a resolution expert, have helpfully offered 3 pieces of advice for those of us who want to make resolutions we can keep. Believe you can do it. Make your resolution tangible. And ask others to help you. This morning we begin a new year of worship and ministry together at Second Presbyterian Church. And on this day, I think these 3 pieces of advice could apply to us as well. You may have noticed that our January sermon series is titled Belonging to Others. It represents the next step in the journey of belonging that we began as a congregation way back in September, but it also represents something new, an outward turn in our journey, an external orientation in our focus. In fact, the focus of this series is the same as that one lonely resolution deep down. Be kinder. Now, you would be justified in wondering a bit about my timing here. Kindness and belonging to others in an increasingly divisive and hostile era. A time when belonging to anyone beyond our immediate tribe is challenging at best and discouraged at every turn. Be kinder. Belong to others. Yes, you would be justified in wondering whether I have seen the world lately, filled with hatred and renewed threats of violence, systems and forces far beyond our control, a world more complex and fearful than ever, and we can't even keep self-serving resolutions beyond 30 days. We can't even keep those goals that we know would serve us well beyond 4 weeks. How can we begin a revolution of kindness? How can we truly belong to others? I do think we begin by believing it is possible with God's help. It is, I think, the first step toward living as if we all belong to God. We say it all the time in church. You've heard it already multiple times this very morning. All are welcome here. All belong to God in this place. But the truth is that our actions reveal our core beliefs. And by that standard, I do wonder if we believe that all of us belong to God. What if we, as a community of faith, made a resolution to really try to live like that's true? It is, I think, a start. Believe that we can do it. Now, the next step, according to those experts, is to make our resolutions tangible, that is concrete. And this is where the words of the Old Testament prophets become most valuable for us this time of year. Their words are clear, not abstractions, but concrete commands. Listen again to the powerful distillation of what God requires of us, offered by the prophet Micah. Do justice, love kindness, walk humbly. The tangible actions prescribed in the prophet's speech stand at the very heart of who we are and how we are to live. They present for us a clear case that faith is embodied, not just spoken with words or felt deep down in our hearts. And they offer simple resolutions for us to keep this year. Simply do justice, simply love kindness, simply walk humbly. And finally, the experts suggest that we ask others to help us. Well, here you are. This brings me to this particular day. Today, as our calendars move past the joy of the holidays, as we muster the strength to return to real life, after all the parties, the food and drink, the more relaxed schedules, the church insists on one final celebration. In the church, the candles are still lit, the trees are still standing. This day we sing songs of glory and joy in the incarnation. Epiphany. A striking revelation. A sudden insight. I've always been grateful that I was ordained on Epiphany 12 years ago tomorrow. I'm grateful that today I will have the joy of sharing that ordination anniversary with two of our Lake Fellows. Each year on Epiphany, I take some time to pause and recall the gifts of that day in 2008. You may know that one of the great ancient traditions in our ordination service for deacons and elders and ministers is the laying on of hands. I remember that January day as my fiancée at the time, Sarah, prayed my ordination prayer. I palpably remember the warmth and the weight of hands on my shoulders. I remember one particular hand, my father's, resting on the top of my head. To this day, I can recall those who stood in the circle around me sharing their prayers, offering their support, promising their encouragement. A tangible sign that this journey is never undertaken alone. On Epiphany, we hear again the story of those three ancient seekers, magi, kings, wise men, who traveled from far off, following a star to the place where the Christ child was. All on its own, it's a beautiful, compelling story with a fantastic plot line. There is this vision, this bright, shining star, these words of prophecy. There is the political intrigue, the journey itself, the treasure chests of gold and frankincense and myrrh. But beyond that single story, Epiphany stands for us as an annual testament to the church's conviction that the story of our faith must not end in Bethlehem's stable or in the sentimental celebrations of the cherubic Christ child. No, this day reminds us that we, like those magi, are still searching, still committed to the journey, still resolved to seek. When Jesus was born in Bethlehem, the Magi missed it entirely. They were still miles and months away. They were duped by King Herod, and, well, surely they dealt with all the complications of holiday travel. How many of you can relate this year? How many of you spent the month of December longing to experience the joy of Christmas deep in your heart? How many of you hoped for that magical, miraculous moment when the incarnation of Christ into the world felt real for you, but for some reason the day passed and you were not fully present in those moments? How many of you need one more shot at meaning this year? A few days before Christmas, one member of the church stopped by the office, and I happened to be standing out in the atrium, and as we talked, he mentioned that his celebration of Christmas may have to wait until April this year. He's just too busy. My guess is his name is Legion among us. Just too busy during December to experience the joy of Christmas. Surely the wise men could relate. And it is their story that gives us this welcomed promise. It is not too late. I think what distinguishes these three is not their punctuality, but their persistence. They simply did not give up. They journeyed on. And in the seeking, they found the source of truth. The stories of the angelic chorus, the band of shepherds, the three magi, they remind us that we will not find God as the result of a purely personal journey, that faith cannot be just another self-improvement resolution or an effort in self-advancement. We must go together. Our epiphanies must occur in community. The warmth and the weight of the hands that rest on our shoulders. And so when the Magi finally make their way to the child, when their Christmas moment arrives, they do not miss it. They kneel down before the one whom they have been seeking for many months. They offer the very best of what they have to Jesus. And then, together, they make their way toward home by a different path. You see, the journey that had led them to this place of Epiphany was ordered, commanded by Herod. But their journey from this place of encounter with the divine will take a different route. Their seeking does not end when they find the Christ child. For there is more to be done, more to discover, more life to live. And so this travel-weary trio, renewed by their epiphany, changed by their encounter, sets out again. And this brings us back to that expert advice on keeping resolutions. First, we believe that what we seek is truly possible. Next, we keep our goals tangible and practical, justice and kindness and humility. And finally, we ask others to help us. For the kind of ministry we are called to undertake simply cannot be accomplished alone. We need each other. Together, we are called to renew the world and serve the kingdom through the power of the gospel. So as we begin to explore what it means to say that we belong to others, I want to share my New Year's resolution with you. In the year ahead, I am committed to the journey we will take together as one community of faith. I'm committed to seeking the meaning of faith in a complex world, a divided age, a time when the courageous voice implanted in the Christian church is both sorely needed and often absent. I'm committed to a faith that can have an impact on the lives of those around us. I am committed to living my life like we all belong to God, and I'm committed to doing it as a part of this united piece of God's kingdom, this united part of Christ's body. On Christmas Day, I pulled out an old editorial. It was written 4 Christmases ago, but it might as well have been written this year. The title was Moments of Grace in a Grim World. And the piece ended with these words of challenge I offer to you. Evil is everywhere. Anger and hatred are loud. The shouting drowns out the quiet. Tragedy and disaster block the view of the good. And yet, there are always signs of progress toward a better future. Look, or you'll miss them. The gift of the Magi was that they kept looking, resolved to seek the presence of God in a grim world, to go together in search of the sacred. This year, let's do more than look. Let's help create the kind of world in which we want to live. I promise you this, no act of justice, kindness, or humility is too small. No challenge before us too great. When we do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly together. Amen.